We're alive and well. I
Yep.
know it's been a hot minute, but we're here.
So let's see. Last time we talked, it was, I don't even remember roughly how long ago it was before you gave birth.
I think I was like 32 or 33 weeks at that point.
Okay.
So I had like 2 months of pregnancy left, plus it's been another 3.5 months.
Yes.
So
Baby
it's
girl is
been a while.
healthy.
Yes. And
She's
growing
beautiful.
fast.
Yes.
Today is actually 16 weeks exactly postpartum for me. So she's 16 weeks, and 16 weeks ago I was giving birth.
So today our goal is to do like a part one of like Sydney's birth story. Do you want to maybe, obviously, like part one, part two, postpartum? Do you want to make that into like a whole nother video type of thing
That
instead of
definitely could. Like, I
asking?
feel like I'm still going through
Right.
postpartum, but I definitely have some insight. And, like, with the postpartum, like, body image, because that's definitely one of those
Yeah.
things that comes back up,
Because I thought about
unfortunately.
asking you, like, since you said you're 16 weeks, it's like, oh, how do you feel? But then I'm like, maybe we should wait. But
16 weeks still feels very fresh. I feel like there's some people that really do just kind of bounce back. But honestly, especially when you're breastfeeding, some people, like, don't lose the weight as fast as they would. And I mean, it took your body 9 months to get as big as it does. It's going to take a little time to get back in
yeah,
most cases. So I'm definitely dealing with that a bit.
I
But
do feel like you've been so good. Like, I know you might not have like shared with me or
I say I'm
something.
probably just,
Also,
I
I
don't
have
talk about
pants
it as
on.
much.
Everybody, okay? I'm just hiding. Um, but you, like, with your body image, like, you were so lean and like fit before you got
Yeah.
pregnant. And then you got pregnant and you were so active throughout your whole entire pregnancy,
Hmm.
which is amazing. And I don't even have a child in me or at all, and I still can't do that. But it's fine. I'm working on it.
But I still managed to gain like 65 pounds throughout pregnancy, even being as active as
But
I
that
was.
means that child needed that,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Because
My
you were
body needed it.
still, yes, your body needed that. You were still very, like, conscious of what you were consuming, and you went on walks every day, walked your dogs. I mean,
Yep.
you're fucking awesome.
Don't hype me up too
I am
much.
gonna hype you up because we haven't done this video in a while.
I
So
know. I was telling Julia when we first hit record, I was like, or just like setting up the camera, I was like, I miss this. Like the setup, being here with you. Like, obviously, in new parenthood, I haven't got as much time with you as we used to. And so I needed this.
yeah.
My little one is at daycare today, actually. She wasn't supposed to be, but she's struggling transition wise. So I gave her a little extra time there because currently I'm only working part time. Starting next month, or this month, I did 2 days a week. Next month, I'll be doing 3 days a week, and then I'll be capping out at 4 days a week. So hopefully, helping her transition a little better by going a little more frequently, just so she gets more used to it. But it's giving us time to record an episode, so
Yes.
thank goodness.
Yes. Thank you for sticking along still. I know it's, like I
Yeah,
said, it's been a while since we have recorded.
I
So
know. I feel bad, and I've missed it for sure.
that's all
And
right.
I feel like I have so much more to share now. Like, this is like a whole nother series
Yeah.
almost, and
It's
can
like a whole
lead.
different version of Sydney that
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm learning about too.
I
It's
know.
great.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do part one of my birth story today. I ended up giving birth at 39 weeks and 6 days.
So, just so she was telling me that she's told this story plenty of times before. So, I might, like, even though I know a lot of these answers, I'm going to probably just like lead her a little bit with
Yes.
the flow of the conversation. Just so it's not easy for her to like skip over things, just since she's said it so many times. But
Yeah, and the mom brain is real. So like postpartum, I still don't know what way's up, what way's down sometimes. So
I don't have an excuse. So,
I'm
um,
rubbing off on you.
right? Okay, so last time we talked about in your video, like, you had, I don't want to say expectations, right? But you had
Yeah.
desires, goals,
Intentions.
intentions was the word we used,
Yeah,
of how you wanted your birth to go.
definitely.
I know you wanted to try to labor a lot at home. What did I say? I was like, you're gonna have a baby.
Oh yes.
When she told me this, side note, squirrel. When she told me this, she said that she was going to labor at home as much as possible or something like that. And
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? Like, you're gonna
is Dylan gonna catch the
Is
baby?
yeah, I was like, "That's you're so badass. That's awesome. Can I be there?" Like, she's like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm just gonna, like, have my contractions as much as possible, like, at home." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well,
That's different than what I thought
I
labor
learned the
was.
lingo.
Yeah,
Got it."
because there's labor and then there's delivery.
Yeah.
They're a little different, but
Anyways, you had intentions on trying to labor at home as long as possible,
yes.
and that didn't quite go as planned.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about that, like when you went into the doctor, why you went into the doctor.
Yeah. So definitely my birth story was not what I expected it to be or intended it to be. But honestly, I still feel very positive about the story that I do have, which I feel very fortunate because a lot of people are so caught off guard by their expectations and what they envisioned it being, that there's a lot of trauma, honestly, that happens for them because it wasn't what they planned for or things go south, and you're just not prepared for that. So that's, I feel very fortunate that one, I tried to keep an open mind and know that other scenarios that could have happened, because it helped me be a little more prepared for it. So I was on weekly appointments by that time because I think once you hit 36 weeks, you go every week. So that Monday, I went for my appointment just to get checked. My blood pressure was a little high, and it had been the last couple of times. But usually, if they would do like a recheck, it would go back down. And honestly, I used to always tell them, well, I take the stairs when I come up here. So I think I'm just a little wore out, honestly.
Fit
Yeah,
AF.
it's on the third floor, not to brag or anything, but it was a little extra steps for me. But they would retake it, and usually it was always better that second time. So they retook it again, and it went back down to like more of a normal range. Usually I'm in like the 120s over high 70s, 80s, but it had been reading like, I want to say high 140s over 90s ish. So
Hypertension.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly what they were worried about. I was not dilated at all at that point. Um, my cervix was still fairly, thick because basically, as your cervix softens, it gets thinner. So it's usually like 1 inch thick, and then as it softens, and I think that's what they call effaced. How effaced you are is how thin your cervix is. So it was still fairly thicker at that point. Um, and then later that week, like Tuesday and Wednesday, I just felt like my water might be leaking almost. And that could have just been me being like a hypochondriac almost. Just because looking out for signs of labor, honestly. And so like there's a few times I told them, I was like, I'm thinking about calling triage and just like checking in with them to see if they think I should come in. So I think Wednesday I actually, no, Tuesday. No, Wednesday. Wednesday, I called in and I was like, hey, I feel like, I've had a little more fluid. Like, do you think this could be my water, like leaking or anything like that? And they told me to kind of like keep an eye on it for that day, wear a pad, see if anything changes, or if I notice that like a lot is coming at a certain point or anything. And nothing really came of it. And then, so Thursday, I went to work and I think I'd skipped the gym that day or the day before. So it was like the first time I was like, I'm not feeling it. By this point, my body was like clapped out. I would say that those last 2 weeks, like I felt like pregnancy was honestly not too bad for me. But those last 2 weeks, I'm like, my joints hurt from how much weight I've gained. Like my feet are swollen. I can't wear half my shoes. I can't wear jeans to work anymore, so I'm always in leggings. And I was just like, oh, this is that wall they talk about hitting
Yeah.
in pregnancy. And so I was just like, I think I was probably wishing for signs of labor too, honestly.
Yeah.
And so Thursday I went to work, and honestly, I just felt like she hadn't been moving as much that day. Like she was never like kicking me all day long, but it was like usually a tumble here and there throughout the day that I would feel. And I'm again probably looking for signs of labor. I was like, I just feel like she's not moving that much. And so at lunchtime I called the triage nurse at the hospital, and they're always going to err on the side of the caution. They're just like, well, why don't you just come in and get checked out just to be sure. And so at that point I was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave work early, go get checked out. I told my husband, I'm like, don't leave work or anything. Like, they're just going to send me home. So let me just get checked out and then I'll come home. So I get to the hospital. And finally, when I was sitting in the waiting room to be seen at the hospital, I did feel her start moving a little bit. So, like, that was reassuring because you just get anxious when things are different than what they're supposed
Sorry,
to
I'm
be.
like behind you. I'm
No,
like,
you're
I'm
good.
kind of tired.
I don't blame you. Me too. Oh, you're tired?
I know. I'm so annoying. I know.
No, I'm just kidding. Um, and so I did feel her finally moving, so that was nice. And then they took me back. My blood pressure was high again, but I can also attribute that to being anxious and nervous about
Yeah.
the situation because I was worried.
Did you because you've had a miscarriage where you
Mhm.
because you didn't feel her moving, where you did that cross through your mind?
I mean, I feel like that could always cross through your mind, but I don't think the miscarriage made that concern any higher than it would for any mom
Right.
that's worried about their,
Not feeling their baby move. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I tried not to overthink it, but obviously, I don't know. Pregnancy can just be weird, and your hormones are so
They're all over the place. So,
sensitive,
yeah.
and um, yeah. So my blood pressure was high again, and then they also weren't quite happy with her fetal movements. They just felt like she wasn't as active as she should be, and so they have like this little thing that makes noises that they'll put on your belly, and they'll like it's almost like it makes a loud buzz and it's supposed to like stimulate movement for the baby. So they did that to me and they did get her to move a few times, but she just was pretty slow. So they kept monitoring me. They ended up watching over me, trying to draw blood. Oh my god, they stuck me, I think, 5 times trying to draw blood from me, which was
They just couldn't
they
get it?
yeah, and
Oh
they
my
blew they
gosh.
blew a vein in one of my arms. So I think they ended up finally getting it in the top of my wrist or something. Like they did here, here, here,
Was it
back.
different people or the same person?
It was the same person like 2 times, and then another person like 3 times. So
Oh
they finally
man.
got some blood out of me, had me do a urine sample and everything, and then eventually my doctor came in because my OBGYN office is in the hospital too, which is convenient. So she just came over. And she was like, well, your blood pressure is high and we're not quite happy with baby's movements. So we're going to keep you overnight and induce you in the morning. And I'm just like, okay. And because on Monday when we were there and my blood pressure was high, she was talking about sending us to triage to be monitored. And like me and Dylan both had like that oh shit moment. We're like, we're not ready.
Yeah.
And so it was like we're like, ooh, scapegoated past that, or we got past that, and then to have her tell me like I was being induced that next morning, like it's just so shocking because you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have a baby within this period of time.
Yeah, it's really happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I was nervous and excited and sad, and that's not really sad at that point, but like dang it, I really wanted labor to come naturally. Like, I wanted my water to break at home or me to have contractions and to get to be at home to do all of that because I feel like the longer that you're in the hospital, the more you can think about other ways of your birth going, maybe needing an epidural sooner because you're like, oh my gosh, how much longer is this going to take? But I feel like if you're at home, you can distract yourself with other things longer. So I was disappointed about
Well,
that.
it's also like hospitals, like just Western, like they like
Yes,
to intervene when maybe it's
definitely.
not necessarily like 100% necessary. And again, I've not had a child yet, but
Yeah.
I've just heard from so many people and done different research. It's like oftentimes it's the convenience over
Mhm. Yeah.
what
Oh,
really
shift
needs
changes
to be
coming up. Let's
happening.
speed things along.
Yeah, like, oh, we're gonna, that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
If I can induce you, then I know what time that's gonna be, and I
Yeah.
can plan for this. So then I'm not gonna be at home with my family. Like,
Mhm.
I don't
No,
know.
absolutely. That was definitely, something in my mind too, which is why I wanted to labor at home as much as possible. So, that was disappointing, but like I was also excited because I knew one I was going to be done being pregnant soon because my body was like I said clapped out. My joints hurt
When I
so
hear
bad.
clapped, I just
Like yeah, no,
think of
no, but it was like
think
I
of
feel
some
like my knees
cheeks.
were gonna like buckle, like
Yeah.
because I'd put on so much weight. My body was not used to holding all of that. And I
Yeah.
was just like, I can't, my belly can't stretch any further. Like,
You're like, this needs to be done now.
yeah. I was running on E. Um, so I texted Dylan, and we had been texting throughout this, and he was actually, my hospital bag was like 90% ready. His was like 75%. So the whole time I was there, he was like, well, when I get off work, I'm going to go get the remaining things for the hospital bag just in case it's ready. I'm like, okay, yeah, go for it. Whatever. They're just going to send me home. Little did I know. So he was right. And I texted him. I said, so glad you got those hospital bags done. Come on up to the hospital whenever. And he's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah.
Just whenever, if you're not too busy or anything. I'm
Yeah.
about to give birth to our child.
Yeah, literally. And so at this point, it was like 4 p.m. And so they took me back to the room that I'd be induced in, and that's where we'd be staying overnight. So I got and like when I got in the hospital room, it was just like nervous, like anxious, but in a good way. Like I was just like jittery almost. And I'm like waiting for Dylan to get there. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I watch TV? Do I, like,
Yeah.
so I was texting work to let them know that, hey, I won't be there tomorrow or for 3 months after that. Because that's another thing is like one of those things when you don't take off before you give birth, you don't know when your last day at work is going to be. And that's kind of like nerve wracking, especially for them because the girl who was taking over my position, she wasn't feeling 100% confident. And so I know she was nervous for me to leave
She's like,
and not
damn
knowing
it,
when it's
you're
going to
really,
come.
I needed another week.
Yeah.
I needed more
No,
time.
it's funny. She was like, I knew when you left. You weren't coming back. I was like, I didn't even know that. So
She's
that's
like, this
awesome.
is on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he showed up, or my husband showed up at like probably 5:30, and he was anxious, but like he was like, I'm excited. And I'm like, me too. Like it's weird knowing that it's coming like so soon. Um so yeah, so he picked up some dinner for us from 54th Street. We just hung out. Obviously, nothing was really going on at this time because labor hadn't started. I guess when I was in triage, I did start having contractions because I could see them on the monitor.
So you did get induced?
Yes.
You got induced,
I'm
but
getting
your
induced
water...
Friday morning.
Okay. Because
So
they
this
wanted
hasn't
you...
happened yet.
Yes, this is the night before.
Um, so I guess I did start having contractions when I was being monitored in that room because I saw them on the monitor, but it felt more like period cramps. But I hadn't felt anything prior to that in the day. Like I wasn't feeling them at work or anything. So I don't know if it just decided to naturally start on its own once she realized she was in a safe environment.
Yeah.
She's like, let me work on this. Um so yeah, I wasn't really feeling them, especially with like the jitters and everything. Like that was the last thing on my mind was having little contractions here and there. So they did end up hooking me up to everything that night too, just to monitor since I was having slight contractions. So yeah, we ate dinner, hung out, got all the stuff ready, all the hospital bag, unpacked everything I would need. And then we got ready to go to bed. I think about 9:30 because we knew we were gonna have to be up pretty early, and I didn't know how well I was gonna sleep in the hospital. Luckily, Dylan brought my body pillow because
that's nice.
It was not comfy in there. And so about 9:30 or 10, I got up and I went to the bathroom, and then as I was crawling back into the hospital bed, I feel like this gush of water, and I'm like, oh, my water just broke. And so, like, I'm like, and it's like still coming out of me. And I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, do I wake Dylan up? Because he had already fallen asleep. And so I'm like, Dylan, like, trying to wake him up. But he's like dead asleep. And I'm like, also, what is Dylan going to do for me at this point? Like,
go get someone?
Yeah, like, why don't I just push this nurse button right here? So I push it. And I was like, I think my water just broke. And she's like, okay, I'll be right in. Like, you tell she did not believe me. Not until she came in the room.
He wakes up and...
Well, the funny thing is, he was sleeping in like this very uncomfortable chair. So he took some sleeping medicine to make sure he could sleep. We weren't anticipating anything happening that night anyways. Yeah. So the nurse comes in, you can tell she's like skeptical, and she's like, okay, well, let me check. And she like lifts the blanket, and there's just like water everywhere. And she's like, yeah, your water definitely broke. And I'm like, I know.
We're like, yeah, thanks. I'm sitting in my... It's not piss.
Yeah, it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a weird sensation because, like,
Does it smell? Someone
um,
told me that it was like. Did you tell me that it was sweet? Someone told me that it smelled sweet.
really, I didn't know
I was
that.
like, hmm.
I've heard baby poop smells sweet, but
I've heard that from someone
from
too.
breast milk, but
Yeah.
um, I didn't notice a smell. I'm sure there was a smell, especially because so I got up, went to the bathroom, and when I came back, like I could see some blood, and which is normal, like your mucus plug has blood in it, like, so that was to be expected, but I saw brown, and so I'm like, oh shoot, is there meconium in it, which is your baby having their first poop while they're still in the sac. And that's not as scary as it used to be. In most cases, like back in the day, they used to kind of like fear monger you about it. And maybe it's just because they didn't know how serious it was. But the concern was when your baby comes out, if they inhale that poop, then it gets into their lungs and can cause an infection. And not only that, once your water breaks, you're at a higher risk for infection already within your body. And so then to have her poop in there too, it's like,
It's
is that,
all just free floating
yeah,
inside.
yeah, but also your water replaces itself. So like once your water breaks, it does start to replenish again, which is
That's
I
interesting.
didn't
I didn't
really
know that.
understand that, honestly. Um
Our bodies are crazy.
I know. Yeah. And so I was like, "Oh wow, my labor has started on its own." So I was like super excited. One, because I was like, "Wow, I would have hated cuz I like underestimated how much water comes out." And so I was like, I would have been so upset if that happened in the house and I had to clean it up or in bed. Like that would have been so disappointing, especially with the meconium because like this dingy, I mean the water's gross already, but like
Yeah, you're
then to
like, now
add
I have
baby poop on top
shit
of it
water, literally.
on my
Like,
bed.
what?
Luckily we have a waterproof sealant over our
Uh
mattress
huh.
already, so we would have been okay, but like just the thought of having to deal with that at home sounded horrible. So I was like, "Oh my god, like labor start at home. That's like so awesome."
Yeah.
Or not at home.
But at the
It started
hospital.
on its own, is
Yes.
what I meant to
That's what
say.
I was thinking because I knew you were going to get induced, but
Hmm.
you didn't have to be because it
No, I
started.
still got
You
induced.
still got
Hmm.
induced?
So, oh, I forgot to mention that once they got me settled in the hospital room, they put Cervidil, which is like, um, it's almost like a tampon with medication. And what it's supposed to do is soften your cervix because my cervix was still not like 100% effaced. So it needed to be softened so that it would be easier once I started dilating. So they put that in previous, and then when my water broke, it ended up coming out. But they're like, well, since labor started on its own, we don't really need to put another one in for you since you're already starting. And so nothing else really happened that night. I don't feel like contractions really
So I
started at
thought
that
when
point.
you get in, like when you're saying labor started on its own, I thought when you're induced, it like speeds it up.
Yes, but okay, so that was just to soften my cervix.
That's not like
That's not
the
pitocin yet.
Pitocin.
Yeah, that'll be the next morning.
Okay, okay.
Hmm. And they start you on an IV for that.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I felt like some contractions here and there, but it was nothing that I couldn't sleep through at that point. So I didn't sleep super great just because I was like anxious, like waiting for things to happen and stuff. But eventually at like 4, I think I woke up and I was like, I'm not going back to sleep. I can't at this point. And they were coming in at 6 to start the pitocin. So they came in at 6. My doctor talked to me. They checked me. I wasn't dilated yet. She said I might be like 1 centimeter, but like that's really trying for that. So I wasn't really dilated, but my cervix had softened, obviously. And so they started the pitocin, and I don't know if they like measure that in like milliliters when they give that to you. But basically, I asked what I was starting at, and she's like, "You're starting with 1. We'll call it milliliters. I don't know what it's measured in. So we'll start you with 1, and then gradually increase from there." So they started that, and then labored for a bit. I didn't feel anything for a while. And then about 10:30, my doctor came in and she said, "We're going to do a balloon." And so a balloon is basically like this little saline ball that they inflate. So they'll put it inside your cervix and then they inflate it with saline.
That sounds scary.
It
Was that
was not comfortable to put in. I can tell you that much. That was very
Did you like, was it like crampy feeling? Was it like,
no, it just felt like there was a hand in my vagina opening my cervix.
oh my God.
No, it didn't cause like cramps. Well, I mean, maybe a little bit, I guess, because that kind of is what happens when they, do cervical exams. You feel like that crampy feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, it was just uncomfortable being put in. And then once it was in, it wasn't that bad. Um, they inflated it. And then what they do is it's like tied to a string of some type and they tape that to your leg and they have like tension on it. So they come in periodically and like pull on it more and tape it further down your leg.
Oh my fucking God.
And it's supposed to help you, like that ball is inflated to a 4. So when that comes out, you're dilated to a 4 at that point. Yeah, that was like not fun. Having it taped to
10
me,
out of 10 don't recommend
don't
that.
recommend, honestly. Like the contractions, fine. Having that constant pull on my cervix, not that fun. So they came in like every 30 minutes or so and they would pull it out a little more and retape it. And it just kind of made it a little more difficult to move around, like having it taped to your
Yeah,
leg
you have a
and
ball inside you.
yeah, literally. Yeah, so it was not like I could like sitting directly down did not feel that great. So like I would stand, try to bounce on the ball a little bit, but just like certain positions it didn't feel very comfortable. So,
You would bounce on a ball? I feel like
yeah.
it would, the ball or balloon would be like, woo!
It's pretty tight in there. I don't know. It wasn't going anywhere.
Ooh.
I could say some things with that. Okay.
Okay.
But it might give it away. So, anyways, so finally at like noon, she came to pull it down more and tape it. And when she went to pull it, it popped out. And
Did
then,
that, like, did you feel relief when it popped?
yes, yeah. Yes. I was like, oh, thank God. I don't have to wear that thing anymore.
Yeah.
And I had more water come out at that point because, like I said, your water's kind of replenishing itself, so more water came out at that point too. And then so I was like, wow, like it kind of felt like a break at that point because the pitocin really wasn't hurting me too much. Like the contractions were fine, like they weren't super aggressive or anything at that point. So like I was just happy to not have that balloon in, honestly, and so it felt like a break. So we were just chilling for like a couple hours. So I would have been a 4 at that point, which is like noon. And then, we labored for a while. Dylan would bring me like ice cream, jello, just stuff to snack on since you're not supposed to eat a lot in the case that you have to have a procedure of some sort. And I'd say probably about 3 or so, it started to pick up more to where I was like a little more uncomfortable. And this is where I had Dylan start getting out like some of my coping things. So I had combs, these wooden combs that you're supposed to squeeze, and it pushes like pressure points on your hands to almost distract you from the sensation of what you're dealing with down here.
Mm-hmm.
So I had combs to squeeze. I also had a TENS machine that you put on your back and turn it on, and it just does like that muscle shocks. So again, it's just different sensation. What else did I have?
Did you feel like anything particularly helped you, or was it just,
I think it's a combination, honestly, and just having Dylan there, like he would rub my back or he would restart the TENS machine for me. Um, I also had a massage gun that he used on me a little bit. And it was just, you like have to distract yourself so you're not focused on the contraction going on. Because if you can distract yourself from that, like you'll be fine. Well, fine is subjective, I guess.
you can typically get through it?
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, I was using those, moving around a lot. Like I was changing positions probably every 10 minutes or so. And then probably they came and checked me periodically, but I'd say they came and checked me again at 5 o'clock. And at that point, I think I was at a 5. So I had progressed one 1 centimeter throughout those couple hours. Because 3 is when I said it started to
Yeah.
pick up a little bit. Yeah, so I'd progressed like a centimeter over the last 2 hours. Or no, I guess technically since noon, I had only progressed 1 centimeter because I was at a 4.
Oh, that's right.
So it took me 5 hours to progress from a 4 to a 5, essentially. But um, and then I'd say about 5, like it picked up pretty good. The pitocin was by the end of it, I was having 22 milliliters of pitocin going through, which is, I mean, to start at 1 to go to 22 is like that's a big, like by 6 p.m. like they were back to back to back contractions. Like I wasn't getting a break in between them
What
really.
did those contractions feel like?
I mean, they were like the same intensity as when from like when it started to pick up. I guess they were a little more intense. It's hard to explain it because it definitely you can tell like it starts low and then like it gets higher and higher and it's almost like more. I mean, obviously it's your uterus contracting, so it does feel like you're clenching, like
I think that's so
almost.
hard. Like I know when I have really bad like cramps, like my first day of my period or something, sometimes I know the best thing to do is like try to relax and not be in fetal
Not tense
position
up.
and not tense up.
hmm
But like it is so hard for me not to do that when I'm in that much pain
yeah,
because I can feel it like clenching essentially, you know what I mean, contracting, and like I want to do that too. I want to lean in with it, but it's really like actually like stretching out, putting your legs up on the wall. I mean, doing stuff like that, and it's difficult.
yeah, for sure. So, they were back to back by this point. Um, I was squeezing my combs every time, had the TENS machine on. Dylan was rubbing my back, and he was like watching the monitor. So occasionally he'd be like, "Oh, here comes another." I'm like, "I don't need you to tell me.
Yeah, you're
I
like,
know
I
there's another
know.
one coming, and I don't need to like know when they're
Anticipate it.
coming."
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, because you just want to relax as much as possible. Um, and I will say I'd done like a hypnobirthing course and I had like these voiceovers that you could listen to. I didn't utilize those and I kind of feel like I should have tried it at least to see if it did anything for me. Again, it's just another form of distraction essentially. You're like meditating through it. Um, but I don't know. I was like interacting with Dylan a lot, so that was a little bit of my distraction. So yeah, they were back to back by this point, and it just I was on the yoga ball a lot by this point, and unfortunately they had to keep coming in, and because I was moving around so much, like the monitor would fall off of her, so they weren't getting good readings on her. And so they kept having to come in and readjust it, and then eventually they wanted to switch to an internal monitor, which is somewhat similar. Yeah, somewhat similar to the balloon because again it goes inside your cervix and it's touching your baby essentially to be able to monitor the baby, their heart rate, and your contractions. So I had to switch to that. So again, I was uncomfortable to sit down again because it was again sticking out of you. But I was still like somewhat bouncing on a yoga ball,
They're like,
walking
quit
around.
being active and lay on the
The
bed.
nurse was like super supportive though. She was like it's like every time I come in here you're in a different position, like you're doing so good. I can hear they're getting more intense for you because you're starting to breathe through them heavier. Like
Yeah.
you're doing great, but we're also working against you by doing all these other
Yeah,
things
no
that
joke.
make it harder for you to move around in labor. So
Yeah.
that's what they warn you about when they talk about going into the hospital too early. But when you're induced, you don't really have a choice.
Um, Maybe for part two, before depending on how long you want to go,
No, we're
we
about
should
to cap it. So
not tell them what happens.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think at this point it was like 6 p.m. And then the next time that they came in to check me, it was 7 p.m. And honestly,
That's such a
that's,
long day. And
yeah, it
it's not
is.
even the
Yeah,
end of
I
it,
had
you
been
know?
through a couple nurses at this point, the one from the previous night, then the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then she was already introducing the next nurse for me when she came in next. And then at that point, she was checking me again. I was at, she said maybe a 5.5. And then she, went to check, they check your temperature and everything at that point too. And honestly, I think that's where we should cap it
Okay.
because second half's going to take quite a bit more information. There's a lot more that happens. But I think that's a good stopping point for
Yeah.
us. Any questions for me at this point that I didn't cover or that you remember me saying?
I think you covered a lot. Even stuff like I don't even remember you
Again,
telling me,
because I feel like I kind of tried to brief the story down for people because it is a lot. And also I think talking about it in this format, it is helping bring it back to me a little more. Like
Right.
I'm getting the play by play. So,
Yeah.
and it's funny cuz like even after birth, like when I came home from the hospital, I found myself like I have pictures of the birth and I would just scroll through the pictures honestly and like relive it because like
Did
it was
you
such an
you
exhilarating.
liked that then? So like
Yeah.
it made you feel like good and empowered, not like
Yeah.
sad.
No.
Good.
Yeah, no, it was I mean, like, obviously there are parts of it that are sad that I didn't want it to happen that way, but, like, the whole experience of, like, going through that with Dylan and then, like, meeting my baby girl, like, that trumps any negative feelings I had towards the way the birth happened.
Right.
And so, like, it was still such a positive experience to me that, like, I would just relive it multiple times. So I feel like that's also why I know it so well because I would
Mhm.
lay in bed. That's how I'd make myself go to sleep at
That's
night.
so sweet though.
I would just like, okay, so I did this and then that happened and then at this time, like I don't know. So it was pretty awesome. But
And
I'm excited to
it's
share the second half.
probably one of the most like impactful things that you could ever do. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's life changing. And it's like even just like afterwards, like staring at her and like looking at Dylan hold her, like there's just nothing that beats that. Like, yeah, you don't realize how big your heart can, like,
Grow and get.
yeah, and like feel like it's gonna burst.
I know I cry watching like a
Oh
reel or
gosh,
Instagram,
I
like
know.
whatever on social media of like a dad. Like it was the other day. It literally was in the kitchen cooking, and I was crying. I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with me?"
Yeah.
It was a mom that just gave birth taking a video of her husband with their little baby, and they did like the skin to skin contact or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And is that called something different?
Mm-mm.
Just skin to skin.
Yeah, skin to
Okay.
skin.
Well, I guess he always would talk to the baby in her belly,
Mm-hmm.
and the baby was like in distress and crying and stuff. And as soon as the baby heard Daddy's
Oh
voice, it
yeah.
stopped crying. I was
Oh
like, okay.
yeah. That's enough social media for
Save
today.
that for my watch laters when I need a good cry.
Yes. All right. Well, we're happy to be back. And
Yes.
I hope we can do this more frequently. Obviously, we won't try to leave you in suspense too long with this part two of the birth story. Like, I hate when people do that. So we'll try to get
In
it
six
some.
months, you'll hear part
Yeah, right.
two.
On her first
Yeah.
birthday, we'll post again. No, so we'll try to get that out somewhat soon. And it'll just be a part two. And then from there, we can
I think
just.
from there it'd be nice to talk about like the body image stuff with the
Mhm.
postpartum, and then just in general postpartum in general, like
Yeah.
stuff that you've been experiencing, like
Yeah.
the aftercare and
Hmm.
what it was like for you and all of that. I think
Yeah.
that would be good.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll be back pretty soon with part two.
Yeah, as always, comment if you liked anything or
Or have
have
any
any updates or
questions.
questions or anything like
Yeah,
that.
for sure. I'm totally down for any questions you might have. So
She's an open book.
I am mostly an open book. There's a few closed pages, but
That's all right.